Well, it is great to welcome you here this morning, as always. I'm Pastor Joey, and it's a privilege to have you here at Stones Hill. Many of you are familiar faces, some of you may be new, and if you are, we want you to feel right at home. It's great to have you here today. We're in a series called Renewing Your Mind, Joy, and we've been talking a little bit about things in our life that give us joy, and not just things, but really a person in life that gives us joy. And maybe you're here today, and joy has been something that's been elusive in your life. You feel like, boy, I just can't quite get that nailed down. And I'm not so sure that I have the joy that I really need to kind of sustain me. It seems like this time of year, late January, early February, there's a lot of morale issues that we have, and we struggle to get through this particular season of the year. And if we are missing people that we love, or we're going through difficult times, it just makes it so much more difficult. But we've been talking about joy, and I'm going to propose and argue this morning that one of the ways that we have joy is through extreme sacrificial service. I know that goes antithetical to everything we see and hear and read, because everything's about, if I achieve this goal, or if I have this possession, or if I am able to accomplish this mission or whatever, then I'll have joy. But joy, paradoxically, is something that it's not so much that we focus in and say, I want to be joyful now, and I'm going to have joy. It's that we find a purpose bigger and greater than us, and we sacrificially give ourselves to it. Then therein lies one of the secrets of joy. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I tell you what, we're going to just work through our way through Philippians chapter 2, 25 through 30 in just a second. But I'm going to tell you kind of how I'm going to wrap it up today. And then you can be thinking about this as well. I feel like on a Sunday morning, of course, I'm ready to get at the task of unpacking the Scriptures and explaining and applying them. And I realize that on a Sunday morning like this, there are people here, and you're coming from a lot of different experiences, emotional things, and decisions maybe you've had to make, and other issues in your life. And you're coming into this, and you're in a place in your spiritual journey where you just need to know that you're loved by God. I'm reminded this morning of the late Henry Nouwen. He was a guy that had a very prestigious career. He, in fact, taught just up the road here at Notre Dame for a few years. He taught at other very prestigious Ivy League schools. He had a lot of credentials, a very sharp guy. He kind of was tapped into the deeper spiritual life issues. And so his name was Henry Nouwen. But he felt that somehow this thing called joy was evading him later in his life. And he decided he would turn away from the prestigious Ivy League school positions and places like Notre Dame and others, just very prestigious positions to have. He turned away from all of that, and he began to serve sacrificially the mentally and physically handicapped in a community in Toronto. And he finished out his ministry here on this earth through sacrificial service. And it made such a difference in his life. His writing, very powerful to read. He's kind of a spiritual life writer. He kind of writes devotionally. Very powerful things that he would say about life and ministry and joy, because he tapped into something. And on one occasion, there was one handicapped young lady there that saw him ministering in this L'Arche community, and said to him, Henry, I want a blessing. I need a blessing. And she just felt a need to have him bless her life. And so he thought, well, he'll just give her a quick blessing. So he takes his thumb and kind of crosses her head with it, and makes the cross on her head and tells her that she's been blessed by God, and she appreciated it, but she kind of recoils. And she said, no. She said, I want a real blessing. I want a real blessing. And so he understood what she meant. And so in the service later that day, he called her up in the service, and he lets her just kind of lean into his chest, and he hugs her, and he pronounces over her life, says her name, and says, you are a daughter of God, you belong to Him, He loves you, and he kind of crosses her forehead and things. And so it really meant a lot to her. And then one thing after another, others wanted that blessing from God, just to know that they are the beloved of God, and to have that pronounced over them. And there was like a 15 or 16-year-old intern that witnessed it, and he stood up and said, hey, I want a blessing too. And maybe that's how you feel today. Maybe you've come into this service with a sense that maybe you've disappointed people in your life. Maybe you've disappointed others that had expectations. Maybe you've disappointed your mom or your dad. You've disappointed maybe a coworker, or you've disappointed a friend. Maybe you just have this sense that maybe I'm just a big life disappointment to everybody, including God. I just feel like I've let so many people down in my life, and that's been my story. I mean, if that's how you feel, today I'll give you an opportunity just to I want to pronounce a blessing over those who feel like maybe my life's just been a disappointment, and I just want to know that I'm loved by God. And so I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that today. So at the end of the service, all those who would just like to have a blessing pronounced over you, okay? Lord, you use my arms. If you need a hug, I'll hug you. But I want to just I can put hands on you and pronounce you blessed by God, and call your name and pronounce you blessed by God, forgiven, and as one belonging to Him. Okay? So you think about that. Now, all of that, we're going to eventually end up there, but there's a lot of things for us to talk about before we get there. Okay? And so we're going to do that today. And one of the things that I've been sharing with you is that what Paul does for this group of believers in Philippi is that he holds up before them the incarnational example of Jesus, and he holds up before this divided Philippian community, and he says, this is your path through the chaos, the madness, the disruption, the divisiveness in your life. Here's the path to joy. The first example he gives, and if you could, guys, just pull up the slide that has the four names on the slide. Thank you. The first example he gives is Jesus. He's like the penultimate example. He's just like, who could we cite as an example of sacrificial service, a greater example of sacrificial service than Jesus himself? And so we have this incredible Christological hymn where Paul extols the beauty and sacrifice and love of the sacrificial love of Jesus for all of us. Paul himself includes himself in this list. He writes about being poured out, being self-sacrificed for not only the Philippians, but for all the churches he was planting and pastoring and trying to ensure the success of those churches. Then he talks about Timothy. And last week, remember, I talked to you about Timothy. How that when he talks about Timothy, he talks about what Timothy was. And we talked about how he was a great leader and how he was going to be just what the Philippians needed to get through the particular issues they were facing there in the body. And so Timothy was an example of sacrificial service. He's going to make them travel the miles, interject himself into all these different issues and problems, very methodically and carefully. He's going to help them sort it out and get on a path to unity and joy again. Okay, and this is exactly what we need to do sometimes. We need these special messengers that God brings into our life to kind of help guide us along the way. And he does that here. And then finally, this fourth and final example that Paul holds before the divided Philippian community and says, follow this guy. I want to tell you not just about who Timothy is and not about my example and the penultimate example of Jesus, the greatest example of self-sacrifice. I want to talk to you about a guy that hardly anybody else knows about. Probably here today, very few of us have probably written papers on this guy or read much about him. Paul says, I want to write to you about a guy by the name of Epaphroditus. And we can call him EPAP. We can call him Afro. Dida, I don't know. It might just be easy just to kind of abbreviate this, and maybe I'll call him all 3 or 4 of those names this morning. But this guy is an incredible example. And here's what happens, okay? He's been entrusted with a sizable love offering gift by the Philippian body. They hear that Paul is incarcerated in Rome. They want to help and be an encouragement. Epaphroditus, Afro, he's given the job. He's entrusted with this large sum of money to take it, pull up our map if you would please, to take it about 800 miles from the little city of, well, it's actually a pretty good sized city of Philippi, across the land, across the Adriatic, into Rome, Italy, and into Rome, okay? To take this on this journey. And when you journey like this, you're always susceptible to problems. You're susceptible to thievery. If someone understands that you have a large sum of money, you're traveling with it, you're alone, you're susceptible. Not only that, but you are susceptible to physical problems. How many of you have traveled and you've gotten sick while you traveled? Yeah. Okay. This is what happens, okay? And so he travels to Rome. Somehow, on the journey, he becomes ill. He's sick, physically. The word travels east, back to Philippi. Epaphroditus continues west to Rome, and by the time he gets there, there's a lot of rumors as to what is happening to our special messenger with a large sum of money. What has happened to him? Did he make it? And not only did he make it, but anytime there are delays from a departure from the planned route or planned schedule, people want explanations. Where is he? Is he going to keep going? Is he going to do like a lot of other people and get crazy when there's money involved? And we're never going to hear from Epaphroditus again? Come on, what's going on? And so they have all of these rumors that are circulating in their minds, in their community. What is going on with Epaphroditus? And so he makes it to Rome. And I think when he makes it to Rome, he's finally he's probably worn down, and he becomes physically ill. And Paul's going to tell us in the text today that he became so sick, he almost died from serving the apostle. And Paul used several terms to describe what he was like. And I want you to see these here. We're going to slow ourselves down and look at them and take a closer look, even probably at the end of the message. But this is what he says. He says of Epaphroditus, he's my brother, my co-worker, he's my fellow soldier. Love the metaphors here. Who also is your messenger, whom you sent to take care of or to serve me and my needs. And if you look at this, we realize that Paul is so polished as he opens up this paragraph. It's almost as if it's a nominating speech of some sort. Okay? And so you know how this goes. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a man or a woman who is prominent in the affairs of the city, a successful lawyer, let's say, a distinguished civil servant, the distinguished governor from the such and such a state, and the next president of the United States, and bam, there they introduce him, and the convention goes crazy, right? We know the motif. We know how this works. We know what it sounds like. And when we read this here, it's almost like Paul is doing that in verse 25 as he broaches this person by the name of Epaphroditus. He says, basically, ladies and gentlemen, it brings me great joy to present to you a man who is distinguished in every way. He's my loyal brother. He's a fantastic co-worker. He's a fellow soldier. He just adds metaphor on metaphor. He is a warrior. He's a messenger. He's my servant, your messenger, and he's the latest hero to grace the streets of Philippi. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please make welcome Epaphroditus? Why does Paul do this? Why does he spread it on so thick for this guy? Here's what's up. I kind of shared it with you. With this substantial monetary gift that Paul brought, he's carried that gift to Paul, but he's sick. And there's some rumors that have started because of this delay in travel plans and delay in arrangement. And so he's going to have to deal with these. And I think that, when I look at this and I kind of understand the backstory of what's going on, I think that Paul must have been overjoyed to think that the Philippian believers would send a personal assistant to him with a lot of money to help him while he's incarcerated in Rome. I think it's phenomenal, and I think that Paul was so moved by it that he says in chapter 1 of Philippians, I think about you guys all the time. I pray for you all the time. I long to see you all the time. He just keeps going on and on and on. He writes it and spreads it so thick. Why is that? Well, I think he was appreciative of what happened. But I also think he's trying to help a guy by the name of Epaphroditus face some disappointments. Maybe he felt, and I'm sure he felt, he had disappointed a lot of people. And so when he gets in Rome with this money, he's able maybe to make sure this money goes to who it's supposed to go to, but he's sick. Perhaps some of the money was used to cover his expenses, his medical bills. Perhaps some of the money was siphoned off of the top to bribe guards, what have you. There was issues and things related here that Epaphroditus had to deal with. And also, if they, back in Philippi, were under the impression that something wasn't quite right with Epaphroditus, then Epaphroditus would have questions that he would have to answer. And so he's struggling, I think, with this. And the thoughts related to this, not only is he physically ill, but he's homesick, and he's struggling, and he wants to go home. And Paul is going to explain why he's sending him home. And when Epaphroditus shows up, they're all going to wonder, hey, we've heard this, we've heard that. And by the way, you're home much earlier than we had planned on you being here. What's up? Have you abandoned our brother Paul? Did you deliver the gift? It's a highly sensitive culture to shame and honor. Have you shamed us, Epaphroditus? Have you shamed us, bud? I mean, come on. We sent you to Rome to be a ministry to the Apostle Paul, and instead he takes some of the money and covers your medical needs. We sent you to Rome to be a blessing and an attendant and a servant, and it sounds to us like that Paul ended up taking more care of you than you ended up taking care of Paul. And so Epaphroditus has these issues. He's got these questions he's going to have to answer. And he's struggling with it. And Paul wants to make sure that they understand this guy accomplished his mission. Don't question his integrity. Don't question his sacrificial service. In fact, he's like a brother to me. He was loyal. He's like a worker. He's energetic as much as possible to do the task assigned. He's a soldier. He's durable. And even though it's not a real popular thing to be associated in Rome right now with an incarcerated individual who is a suspect of the state, especially for all this kingdom talk that he writes about and talks about. And he was willing as a soldier to take on the stigma of that and the possible persecution that would come with that kind of an association with a prisoner of Rome. He was a soldier, Paul says. He was a messenger. He was a great servant representative. Guys, he represented you well. You can be proud of this guy. And I just want to ask, pause here just a second, to ask the question, guys, if I, as your pastor, had to write a testimony for you, what could I include? What could I write? A fellow soldier, yes. A loyal brother or sister? Yes. A great energetic worker? For sure. I think these are little succinct summaries of what a Christ-following life is to look like in our lives. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we don't get it right. And sometimes things happen, and we're not maybe the brother we should be, or the worker that we should be, or maybe we flag in the battle or the messenger thing. We just don't represent the calling very well, or maybe we don't represent Christ as well as we should. But these are little succinct summaries of what a joy-filled life is to include and look like. And so think about that. And think about, well, what if someone gave a summary of my life and wrote in letter form? What would they write? And could they write this, give this commendation, encouraging word as Paul gives for his brother Epaphroditus? Okay, verse 26. For he longs for all of you. He's homesick and he's distressed. And so he's not only dealing with a physical illness, but he's also struggling with this homesick issue where he wants to go home. He wants to correct these rumors that maybe are circulating about his service. And so he's really, really wrestling with accomplishing his task and wanting to return home. And if you've ever been homesick, you know exactly what that's like. You miss your family. You miss your bed. You miss your pets. You miss the good cooking. All right? You miss your friends. You miss your community. You miss your church. And emotionally, somebody reminds you of home, you just break down. Have you ever been there? That's where Epaphroditus is. He's right there. And he's wrestling with this, wanting to return home. And so Epap, like I said, he makes it to Rome. And I think he got weaker and weaker on the journey. He gets to Rome. He collapses. He almost dies. And Epap says, I want to go home, Paul, but I don't know if they're going to receive me very well among all the rumors. And if I show up earlier than expected, then I have a feeling there's going to be issues, and I really need somebody to kind of clarify the issues. And Paul says, Epaphroditus, pick the pen up. I got this. Verse 27. Indeed, he was ill. You have heard this. You have heard that. This has circulated here. Indeed, Paul says, the guy was sick. I witnessed the part of that process. In fact, Paul says he almost died. You don't have to worry. Epap is a great soldier, brother, warrior, messenger, representative, but he almost died. And we prayed for him, and we did all we could medically, and I wasn't, for whatever reason, able to heal him like I was able to heal some other people. I wasn't able to do it, but God, verse 27, slide 2, had mercy on him. And that's where Paul leaves it. And God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. And the picture is just wave of sorrow that just would have come over the apostle, and we've been there. If you're viewed as a weakling, all right? And he was worried about being viewed as a weakling, I think. Or you're being viewed as a mama's boy and unable to take the big 800-mile adventuresome journey with money and deposit the task as recommended and as planned. And maybe he's worried about bringing shame on the people and their gift. And like I said, it's a very shame, honor, sensitive culture. You did not, deviate here from the plan, especially when a large sum of money is involved, and not have issues and problems. And so Epap is dealing with this. And we don't know the precise nature of his ailment. But he's sick. And he's homesick on top of that. And Paul said it was the intervention of God. He said if God had not intervened in his case, I'd have sorrow because I would really feel bad because he was waiting on me and attending to my needs, and he died while he was serving me. That would make me really have a lot of sorrow. He said, secondly, it would be sorrow upon sorrow. There would be double sorrow because he would have died in such a way that, and maybe would have been misunderstood as well, and maybe even viewed as a deserter or a weakling, unable to accomplish the task. And so Paul is just struggling with this as well, the thoughts of losing this guy. And he's also sees the struggle that Epaphras is having here, trying to figure out what he's to do in this particular situation. Slide 3, verse 28. Therefore, I am all the more eager, Paul says, to send him. If you guys think he's showing up too soon, or you think he's deviated from the plan too much, I just want you to know he's coming home. I'm sending him. He's not deserting anybody. I'm the one that's saying, Epaphras, you need to go home. So that when you see him again, you may be glad, Paul says, and I may have less anxiety. Paul was just like the rest of us. He struggled with anxiety every day, just like you and me. But he chose joy. And he's choosing it here. And he wants Epaphroditus even to choose joy. And he wants to be a source of joy when Epaphroditus is finally able to make it home. You know, I think, like I said, I think that Epaphroditus was facing a lot of questions when he finally gets home. People challenging his integrity. People wondering if they would ever see him again. People wondering if Paul would ever speak to them again. You know, again, it's an honor-shame culture. It'd be kind of like if I invited someone to Thanksgiving dinner, let's say, and when I bring out the plate, I lift up the lid, and what they see is a pile of toasted cheese sandwiches. You see how that would be kind of an insult, right, in our culture, right? It would be an insult, wouldn't it? That just, oh, how could that ever happen? You know, well, how could I ever do that to someone Thanksgiving dinner? Okay, now you're with me. Okay, and so, like, I think when you look at this and you send somebody to serve someone's need, and they end up falling far short of your expectations of what you had in mind for them to do, they really felt that they had shamed Paul in some way. And they were thinking, you know what if Paul says, you guys are so weak. You send me this guy to be an attendant? You think I'm coming back to Philippi? You think I'm going to visit you guys again? No way. This is what you think of me, right? Again, honor, shame, culture. And they were so in tune with this and so worried that they had somehow insulted the apostle, and Paul comes up with this incredible statement or explanation back to the Philippians and says, wait a second, guys, welcome him home. Why? A brother, a warrior, a servant, a worker, a courier, an incredible representative. This guy deserves a hero's welcome. And so Paul does this. He says, welcome him, verse 29. In the Lord with great joy, and honor people like him. Christ gets the glory, but look at what he was able to do. And Paul seems to be saying, if there are any other rumors out there that Epaphroditus didn't do his job, or that he left me earlier than planned, and thus abandoned me, or that he has somehow shamed you in some way, he says, I want you to reconsider. In fact, give him a hero's welcome back home. Epaphroditus, it's so good to have you back. You're a soldier in from the battle, and we want to welcome you home. You weren't a burden. You did commendable service. Bring out the band, the bouquet, and the roses for this guy. He deserves a VIP's welcome back. Again, a brother, a worker, a servant, a courier, a messenger. Ladies and gentlemen, the latest hero to the streets of Philippi, your very own Epaphroditus. And they were to applaud this guy's effort. And Paul, again, he spreads it on so thick because he's trying to help these individuals understand that in no way has he been disappointed, and that Christ has been lifted up through incredible, exceptional, distinguished sacrificial service from this guy, called Epaphroditus. Now look at verse 30. Because he almost died. Paul says it again. 3 times he talks about how sick Epaphroditus was. Verse 26, 27, verse 30. He almost died. He was sick. Guys, we almost had a funeral for this guy. And Paul makes it very, very clear. I like how he says in the latter part of verse 30, he risked his life to make up for the help you yourselves could not give me. I looked into the word risk. Guess what? It's a gambling term. Aphrodite, or Venus, was the goddess of gamblers. And when a pagan Greek threw the dice, he would cry out, and this is where Paul does a play on Epaphroditus' name. He would cry out, Epaphroditos, and throw the dice, right? Hoping that the god, the Aphrodite deity, would smile on the throwing of the dice, and they would roll up anything but snake eyes. They would roll up the number that would win them the prize. Epaphroditus' name had connections with that custom. And so Paul wrote that Epaphroditus, he risked his life. He gambled his life. Charming, loving, hard-working Epaphroditus, he sets personal comfort and safety aside, and he measured all of that against his mission. He sets it aside. He rolls the dice to see what God might do. Ray Stedman calls him a daredevil soul. What about you? What about us? Are we this kind of servant? Does our life mirror the sacrificial, succinct statements that Paul gives of what a Christ follower is to be like? I mentioned to you earlier how that these are, I think, 5 succinct statements for those who would like to be heroic in life. And I think sometimes we think the heroes are the guys, the gals that have so much going for them. They've impacted the world both far and near, and they're just incredible, never fail, never disappoint you kind of people. And Paul shows us another picture, though. And if we get back to those succinct summaries, guys, if you want to be truly heroic, love your family like a brother, like a sister. Love your family and care for your family. That's heroic. And if you want to be a powerful influence for good, compliment your teammates. Come along, be an energetic worker, be that team player. If you want to be truly heroic, battle for the right cause, for a bigger cause, for a cause that's going to outlive you. If you want to be heroic, fulfill your calling, accomplish your mission, whatever that may be. If you want to be truly heroic, represent Jesus well, just like Epaphroditus represented. Though he was sick, though he struggled, but he represented the Savior well. And maybe that's what we need to think about as we think about what it is to not just live our lives in the shadow of our disappointments and the disappointments of people, but how to live life truly heroically. And whether that disappoints or doesn't, we live life heroically for these causes, these reasons. And what Paul says, you're going to wake up one morning, you're going to pull back the shades, and you're going to think, this is joy. I love my family. I gave myself to the right things. I live for something bigger than me. I represented Jesus well. And I enlarged and blessed the people around me as a good teammate, a good worker would do. That's the stuff of heroism. And so Paul says, I want you to welcome this guy back home. I don't want you to give him a hero's welcome. I thought about the soldier metaphor, and I thought about how the soldiers sometimes come home unsuspecting. They show up someday, you're on the ball field or you're in your place of work, in an office, or maybe you're at home over the holidays and the soldier shows up. You've seen this, and it surprises everybody. Well, I think that's a great metaphor for us as we think about not only living our lives heroically, but what would life be like if we every day, husbands and wives, will welcome each other home as a hero from the battle? What would it be like if every church service, everybody who came through those doors, were welcomed home as a hero from the battle? Oh, I know we can't always have bouquets of flowers for people and balloons and the band, striking up the band and playing a hero's welcome. I understand that. So many times we park that car in the driveway, we get our mentally get ourselves in focus. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to lead this family. I'm going to love this family. Nobody's going to be singing my praises. Nobody's going to be asking for my autograph. I'm not going to be on the evening news, and there's not probably going to be a bouquet of flowers and balloons and a band to play my homecoming. I understand that, but I got to go in, I got to lead, I got to love, and I'm going to do that faithfully every day. That's heroic. That's the kind of life you and I are to aspire to live, and to be inspired to live. Selfless, sacrificial service. I've just kind of gleaned from the internet a few clips here and there to help capture this motif of a fellow soldier who is being welcomed home with great, great joy. Won't you watch this? Well, if you need Kleenexes, we've got them here in the front, and we can distribute those. But I kind of think that's what heaven's going to be like when you finally make it home. Hebrews talks about a cloud of witnesses, doesn't it? And when the people are in the stands cheering our earthly sojourn, and when you finally make it home, you show up on the 50-yard line of the heavenly city. On that 50-yard line, the gridiron in heavenly places, the crowd goes crazy because the soldier has made it home. And see, that's our goal. But sometimes on this side, we go through some tough places. We get sick. We bury people we love. We struggle with divisiveness and division in our families, and conflict and things, leadership issues and things. This is what life is about. But there's those moments where God gives us clarity in these moments of confusion, and the clarity that He's giving to this new community this morning is that love your family, be loyal brother and sister, love your family, be a soldier. Life's not easy all the time. Sometimes we pull an Epaphroditus and we go down that road, whether we want to or not. Stay faithful, because that hero's welcome home is on the way. Now, I can't help but think that there are some here today who feel like, Pastor, I've disappointed. Back to this theme of disappointment. I've disappointed so many people in my life. I've felt like, just like Epaphroditus, I didn't know if Philippians are still going to love me because I failed them. I don't know if Paul's still going to love me because he's sending me home early. I feel like Epaphroditus could easily say, I feel like I'm disappointing all the significant people in my life. I've disappointed my wife. I've disappointed my husband. I've disappointed my co-workers. I've disappointed the people closest to me, my kids. I've just disappointed so many. I've even felt like I've disappointed God. If you're there today, I want to be the first to welcome you home. Welcome home. To a new beginning, a new life, a hero's welcome. Why? You're on the battlefield and you're coming home. Okay? And so what I want to do, I've never really done it quite this way before. And I realize that some of you are much taller and bigger than me. So if I need to stand up a couple of steps up and just to hug you, and if you need to lay your head right there, feel free. This shirt will wash up nice. Okay? No problem. Just for a second, tell me your name. And I'm going to call your name out. And then I'm going to pronounce you the beloved son or daughter of God. Okay? And we're just going to do that this morning. And it'll be your first step to coming home. Okay? You're not a disappointment. You are the beloved of God. And it's time for you to begin to orient your life in such a way that your joy will be full, your mind renewed. Can I love my family? I believe you can. Well, maybe I haven't done a very good job of loving my family. Maybe I haven't done a very good job of being a warrior or soldier. I've copped out when the going got tough. Maybe I've not done a very good job of being a representative of Jesus and representing Him. All these little succinct summaries of the Christian life that He gives in behalf of Epaphroditus. Maybe you've not checked up on those. And you're just like, yeah, I think probably that's true. But today's a beginning. And I want to really just see the Lord work in my heart and life today. Okay? So let's do this. Sacrificial love and service. Play that song if you would. And I know that there's been times in my life that I've disappointed all the important people. And it's been so wonderful because there's been in those times, there's been people like Paul that come in and see value. And they see something worth claiming for good. And I ask and pray today that each of us would feel the loving forgiveness and grace. And we would have not only your love and grace, but you would just raise up people in the body and in their network of relationships that would be able to step in and say, you know what? Yeah, these things may have happened in your life, and maybe there's been family issues and team issues and other issues in your life, but you know, I see so much good here, and I claim you for the kingdom, and I set you free to do the right thing, and just to have that word of encouragement. And so I just thank you for that today, and I thank you for those who have fulfilled that Apostle Paul role in our lives. And I just ask and pray that there's some here today that are homesick. I just think maybe watching that video, and sometimes there's college students that are homesick, and there's military guys that are homesick, and sometimes we go on summer camp trips and we're homesick. And there's lots of practical things maybe that we can do to help get through those times. But oh, what a blessing to know that we are the beloved of God, and that we belong to you, and you're with us here. And then I can't help but think also that there are some who with great affection are longing for home. And they're longing to see people that they love already. And I ask and pray you would be their strength today and help them to stay faithful. What is it that our loved ones want us to do? Is it any different than what Paul saw mirrored in the life of Epaphroditus? Love our family. Serve with distinction. Represent the gospel well. Be a credible voice for truth. Sacrificially give ourselves away, and therein find your joy. So again, we thank you for this service today. We thank you for this group of people. And now may we all feel that we are the beloved of God, set free in your family to impact, to influence for good, to serve radically in Jesus' name. Will you stand with me this morning? That's Philippians chapter 2. We'll begin Philippians chapter 3 next week. Someone once said, we cannot do great things, only small things with great love. And maybe that's your calling today. Go in grace and in peace. We'll see you next week.